Life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. One moment you're on top of your game. The next, the world shifts beneath your feet. This is a story about that shift, about loyalty, betrayal, and the enduring power of genuine connections. Before we dive in, if you enjoy stories about real-life challenges and triumphs, make sure to hit that subscribe button for life stories and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss what happens next. "We're restructuring to maximize shareholder value," he announced, his voice devoid of any real warmth in our brief, sterile meeting. "Your position, Clayton, is being eliminated. Effective immediately." My name is Clayton Miller. For 14 years, I poured my heart and soul into building the Eastern Division of Northstar Apparel. I took it from virtually nothing and transformed it into their top-performing unit, not with flashy presentations or corporate buzzwords, but with trust, consistency, and honest, hard work. I handled our key accounts personally. I knew their concerns, their families, their little quirks. These weren't just transactions. They were relationships, the kind that brought in $4.2 million in annual contracts. The new CEO, Kane, had been with us exactly 8 weeks. Harvard Business School, a buzzed haircut, impeccably custom suits. He was the epitome of the new guard. He'd never once asked me about our client relationships, never inquired how we'd managed an 18% year-over-year growth while other divisions flatlined. He never wondered why Sunbeam Financial and Vanguard Properties, our 2 biggest accounts, specifically requested me on their quarterly calls. As security walked me to my office to pack my things, I saw Alicia from HR. She couldn't meet my eyes. She'd been there 15 years, even longer than me. The CFO, Thomas, walked past, then did a double take. "Clayton?" he started, but then just stopped, patting my shoulder awkwardly before hurrying down the hall. I packed quietly, family photos, the fishing trophy the Vanguard Properties team had given me, a handwritten note from Diane at Sunbeam, 14 years, fitting into a single cardboard box. I nodded respectfully to security, walked to my car without drama. In my rearview mirror, the glass tower of Northstar Apparel shrank. For the first time in 14 years, the weight of 30 employees and millions in contracts wasn't on my shoulders. It should have felt liberating. Instead, it just felt profoundly wrong. That feeling of wrongness, it wasn't just about losing a job. It was about watching something I'd meticulously built being casually dismantled. I started at Northstar Apparel when they were a much smaller operation, working out of a gritty warehouse down in Richmond, Virginia. It feels like a lifetime ago. Back then, we were scrappy, hungry, just trying to break into the corporate uniform market, chasing contracts with regional banks and healthcare companies. The Eastern Division, the one they eventually handed to me, was hemorrhaging money. The ultimatum was clear: fix it or we close it. I had 9 employees, a shoestring budget, and a monumental task ahead. For those first 3 years, my car became my second office. I personally drove to every single prospect within a 100-mile radius. I didn't just pitch them, I listened. I learned about their pain points with their current suppliers, the late deliveries that threw their operations into chaos, the poor quality control that made their employees look unprofessional, the inconsistent sizing that was a constant headache. And one by one, I fixed those problems for them. I promised, and I delivered. My team, my small band of believers, grew from 9 to 15, then to 25 dedicated people. We finally moved out of that cramped warehouse annex and into a proper office space, a place that reflected the success we were starting to achieve. I remember promoting Janice from customer service to account management. She had this incredible knack for handling even the most difficult clients with grace and finding solutions where others saw roadblocks. I hired Keith, fresh out of design school, a bit green but with a portfolio that buzzed with raw talent. He showed me mock-ups that solved logistical problems we hadn't even consciously identified yet. He saw things differently. My son, Dylan, was just 12 when I started this journey with Northstar. Now he's 26, a talented architect making his own way up in Seattle. My wife, Jennifer, she was my rock through all of it. Every late night spent poring over spreadsheets, every weekend emergency call from a frantic client, every time I had to jump on a plane at a moment's notice to save an account, she was there. Her unwavering support, her belief in me, it was fuel. "It's building something that will last, Jen," I'd tell her, and she believed me. I believed it too. 3 different CEOs had come and gone during my tenure at Northstar. Each one, in their own way, recognized and valued what we, the Eastern Division, had built. The company transformed from a regional player into a national competitor, and my division consistently led the pack in both growth and client retention. Our numbers spoke for themselves. Then, the merger happened last year. Kestrel Group, a private equity firm, bought us out. They installed their own board, their own people in key positions. Initially, I wasn't overly concerned. In business, good numbers are supposed to be the ultimate shield, right? But the cracks, they started to show subtly at first, then more obviously. Brandon Kane arrived, the new CEO, with his entourage of efficiency experts and their ever-present spreadsheets. They were a different breed. In meetings, they talked a language I barely recognized, full of jargon about client acquisition costs, churn rates, and leveraging synergies. They never once, not in all those meetings, talked about client relationships. They didn't seem to grasp that the numbers on their spreadsheets were built on years of trust, personal connections, and going the extra mile. Things you couldn't just plug into a formula. About 2 weeks before my termination, Brandon Kane asked for a comprehensive report on all major accounts. I compiled everything: contract values, renewal dates, detailed growth opportunities, the works. What I didn't include, what I couldn't include because you can't quantify it on a spreadsheet, was the human element. I didn't write about attending the funeral of Sunbeam Financial's procurement director's father, not as a Northstar representative, but as a friend offering condolences. I didn't detail how I personally drove to the warehouse at 2 a.m. to inspect Vanguard Properties' first major uniform order, ensuring every single piece was perfect for their company-wide rollout the next day. These were the things that cemented loyalty, the things that made us more than just a vendor. When Kane's assistant scheduled our meeting, the one where he fired me, for just 10 minutes, a cold knot formed in my stomach. I knew. I'd seen this play out before, to others in different companies over the years. The swift, impersonal dismissal. I just never ever thought it would happen to me, not after everything I'd given, everything we'd built. The morning after being let go, I found myself in my home office, the silence almost deafening. For 14 years, my mornings had started with a flurry of emails, calls, the hum of a division gearing up for the day. Now, there was just the blank screen of my personal laptop and the quiet ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. My phone, usually buzzing by this hour, was silent. No messages from work. Well, former work. Jennifer brought me a cup of coffee, her hand lingering on my shoulder for a moment, a silent question in her touch. "What are you thinking?" she asked softly, her voice a comforting anchor in the sudden stillness of my new reality. I looked out the window, at the familiar suburban street, so different from the bustling city views I was accustomed to. "They don't understand what they've done," I said. And the surprising thing was, I wasn't angry. Not yet, anyway. Instead, I felt this strange, almost unsettling clarity, a sharpness of focus I hadn't experienced in years, maybe decades. The constant pressure, the weight of responsibility, had lifted, and in its place was a raw, unfiltered view of the situation. I opened my personal laptop, not the company-issued one I'd returned, and navigated to my contacts. These weren't the names in the Northstar corporate database. These were my own records, personal email addresses, direct cell numbers, 14 years of genuine connections, painstakingly cultivated. The first call came around 9:30 a.m. The caller ID showed Diane from Sunbeam Financial. I took a steadying breath before answering. "Clayton," her voice was urgent. "We just got a mass email about organizational changes at Northstar. Something about streamlining operations. Please tell me you're not affected by this." I let out a slow breath. There was no point in sugarcoating it. Diane, I was let go yesterday. The silence on the other end of the line stretched, thick and heavy. It spoke volumes, more than any words could. Who's taking over the accounts? She finally asked, her professional composure wavering slightly. They didn't say, I replied honestly. I assume it'll be one of Brandon Kane's new team members, someone he's bringing in. Another pause. I could almost hear the gears turning in her mind. Clayton, she said, her tone shifting, becoming more direct. We've got our contract renewal discussions scheduled in 6 weeks. You know that. I do, I affirmed. And I need to be perfectly frank with you, Diane continued, her voice firm. The board only approved staying with Northstar last time because of you. Your team, your service. The pricing, honestly, was higher than some of your competitors, but you always delivered. You always fixed problems before they became problems for us. I didn't respond immediately, letting her words sink in. In the background, I could faintly hear the rhythmic tapping of her pen against her desk, a nervous habit she had when she was mulling over difficult decisions. I need to talk to my team here, she said finally. This changes things. Can I call you back on this number? Your personal cell? Of course, Diane. Anytime. After hanging up, I walked downstairs. The aroma of Jennifer making lunch filled the kitchen. She looked up, her eyes questioning. You okay? She asked, her brow furrowed with concern. I managed a nod. Yeah, I said, a nascent sense of possibility beginning to stir. I think I will be. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text message from Keith, my talented design lead back at Northstar. The message was short and to the point. Brandon Kane called an emergency meeting, asked about client contact info for your accounts. No one's giving him straight answers. What's happening? I set the phone down on the kitchen table without replying immediately. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but the picture was still blurry. Later that afternoon, Harold from Vanguard Properties called. Then it was Michael from Eastern Bank, then Stephanie from Bright Healthcare Systems. The conversations all followed a disturbingly similar pattern. Initial shock and disbelief at my sudden departure, followed by a wave of concern about the future of their accounts, and then anxious questions about their contracts and the transition plan, or lack thereof. With each call, I was honest. I didn't badmouth Northstar or Brandon Kane. That wasn't my style. I simply answered their questions as directly as I could. Yes, I had been terminated. No, I wasn't aware of any specific transition plan for my accounts. Yes, I was considering my options moving forward. By the time evening rolled around, my phone showed 5 missed calls from Brandon Kane. I let them all go to voicemail. That night, instead of dwelling on what I'd lost, I opened my laptop and created a new spreadsheet. This one wasn't about clients, or contracts, or revenue projections for Northstar. This one was titled Possibilities. I started listing companies that had tried to recruit me over the years, competitors who might value someone with my experience, and, more importantly, my connections. I even jotted down the idea of starting my own consulting firm. For 14 years, I diligently built bridges for Northstar Apparel. Now, standing at a crossroads, I had to decide whether to burn them down in anger or to start building new ones, this time for myself. The silence from my end seemed to amplify the noise at Northstar. 3 days after my termination, Brandon Kane's increasingly frequent texts escalated to direct calls. I let the first few ring out, listening to the growing edge of frustration in his voicemails. On the 4th day, I finally picked up. Clayton, we need to talk, he said, his voice noticeably tighter, more strained than it had been in our last dismissive meeting. The easy confidence he'd exuded just days before was gone. Some concerns have come up with several key accounts. I could almost picture him in his pristine office, the view of the city sprawling behind him, now perhaps looking a little less grand. I'm sure your team can handle it, Brandon, I replied, keeping my tone even, neutral. There was a beat of silence. That's just it, he admitted, a crack in his composure. Sunbeam Financial is threatening to pull their contract. They're saying they only worked with us because of you. I watched a cardinal land on the bird feeder outside my kitchen window, a bright splash of red against the green. Nature, blissfully unaware of corporate dramas. Well, Brandon, I said calmly, that's their decision to make, isn't it? He clearly wasn't expecting such a detached response. Look, he pressed on, his voice taking on a more conciliatory, almost desperate tone. Maybe we moved too quickly with these restructuring changes. The board is concerned about the potential revenue impact, significant impact. He paused, then threw out the bait. We could discuss a consulting arrangement to help with the transition, to smooth things over with these clients. Generous terms, of course. For a fleeting moment, I considered it. A consulting gig would be easy money, a comfortable cushion while I figured out my next permanent move. It was tempting, but something felt fundamentally off about his sudden change of heart, this abrupt pivot from summary dismissal to desperate plea. It wasn't about genuine concern for the clients, or even for the company's stability. It felt like pure self-preservation on his part. I appreciate the offer, Brandon, I said, choosing my words carefully. But I need some time. I'll think about it. I had no intention of calling him back quickly. That afternoon, I met Jerry Coleman for coffee. Jerry had been Northstar's CFO before the Kestrel Group merger, and, like many of the old guard who understood the true foundations of the company, had been pushed out. He still had friends, reliable sources, within corporate headquarters. Brandon's in full panic mode, Jerry said, stirring his coffee with a wry smile. Apparently, Sunbeam and Vanguard Properties both sent formal letters this morning. They've officially indicated they won't be renewing their contracts when they come up. My eyebrows rose. Did they say why? I asked, though I had a strong suspicion. Jerry chuckled. Pretty much corporate speak for we only trusted Clayton Miller. The official reasons cited were loss of key relationship personnel and concerns about leadership instability and future service continuity. I nodded slowly, feeling a strange mixture of validation for the work I'd done and a genuine concern for my former team members, who were still caught in the middle of this mess. There's more, Jerry continued, his expression turning more serious. And you need to be aware of this, Clayton. Brandon is trying to spin this. He told the board that you're actively sabotaging the company. He's claiming you're calling clients and telling them to leave Northstar. I set my coffee cup down, a little harder than intended. That's outrageous, I said, a flash of anger finally cutting through my composure. I haven't told anyone to do anything. I've taken their calls, answered their questions honestly. That's it. I know that, and you know that, Jerry said. But that's not how Brandon is painting it to the board and to Kestrel. He's building a narrative, trying to make you the scapegoat for his own disastrous decisions. He's even exploring ways to try and claw back your severance pay, claiming breach of your termination agreement. The audacity was breathtaking. On my drive home, my phone rang again. Brandon Kane. This time, I let it go straight to voicemail. When I listened to it later, his tone had shifted dramatically once more. The desperation was still there, but it was overlaid with a forced, almost sycophantic pleasantness. Clayton, the message began, I think there's been a significant misunderstanding here. The entire leadership team and the board, deeply value everything you've built for Northstar here in the Eastern Division. Tremendously. The board has authorized me to offer you a senior vice president position. Better title, better compensation package than you had before. Substantially better. Call me back, Clayton. We should discuss this. We need to find a way forward, together. It was a blatant attempt to buy my silence, my cooperation, my relationships. Later that evening, another call came through, but this one was different. It was Daniel Thompson, the CEO of Apex Outfitters. Apex was a smaller, more agile competitor, and Daniel had tried to recruit me twice over the years. Clayton, he said, his voice warm and direct. Heard through the grapevine what happened over at Northstar. Their loss, my friend. My previous offer still stands. But given the circumstances, and knowing what you bring to the table, I'd like to sweeten it. Senior VP, an equity stake in Apex, and complete autonomy over your client relationships. You build it your way. I told him I appreciated the offer, and that I needed a few days to consider all my options. The landscape was shifting rapidly. Just as I was processing Daniel's offer, an email landed in my inbox. It was from Northstar Apparel's legal department. The subject line was stark: notice of potential violation of post-employment obligations. The language within was aggressive, threatening, full of legal jargon about non-solicitation agreements, and implying imminent litigation if I didn't cease and desist all interference with company business relationships. They were trying to intimidate me into inaction. Without comment, I forwarded the entire email to my lawyer friend, Paul Harrison. The game was definitely escalating. The legal threat from Northstar, while unsettling, also felt like an act of desperation. My lawyer friend, Paul Harrison, called early the next morning, his voice brisk and confident. "Clayton, about that email from Northstar's legal eagles? It's paper thin," he stated without preamble. "They're trying to intimidate you, pure and simple. I pulled up the employment agreement you signed with Northstar all those years ago. You never signed a specific non-solicitation agreement regarding clients. The standard non-compete clause only prevents you from joining a direct competitor, specified on a very narrow list, for 6 months. It says absolutely nothing about clients choosing to follow you if you leave. They have no legal grounds to stand on here." I remembered signing that contract 14 years ago. It was a different era for the company then, a different leadership. The old CEO, a straightforward man named Arthur Jenkins, had explained it clearly. "Clayton, this just prevents you from taking our training, learning our systems, and then immediately jumping ship to work for our direct competition down the street. It's standard protection. It's not about handcuffing you or your relationships." "So, Paul," I clarified, "I've done nothing wrong legally?" "Not a thing," Paul confirmed. "In fact, if they were foolish enough to pursue this, we could potentially countersue for wrongful termination. The abrupt nature of your dismissal, the complete lack of a transition plan for a senior leader with your track record and responsibilities, the clear evidence that client relationships were immediately jeopardized. Courts don't look favorably on that kind of corporate behavior, especially when it reeks of scapegoating." A wave of relief washed over me. The legal bluster was just that. Bluster. I thanked Paul and hung up, feeling a renewed sense of confidence. Just as I was processing this, another email arrived. This one was from Janice, my former protege at Northstar, now a key account manager. The subject line was ominous. "You should know this." Attached was an internal Northstar presentation, dated 2 weeks before my termination. My blood ran cold as I clicked it open. It was a PowerPoint deck, meticulously prepared by Brandon Kane and his efficiency experts. The title slide read, "Project Phoenix, Strategic Realignment of Eastern Division for Maximized Shareholder Value." What followed was a cold, calculated plan. It explicitly included eliminating my position, senior leadership redundancy, regardless of performance. It detailed replacing experienced and therefore more expensive staff members with cheaper recent graduates. It outlined a strategy to implement significant price increases, upwards of 15%, on long-term, loyal clients as soon as their current contracts came up for renewal. Then I saw the note on slide 12, a bullet point that jumped off the page. Current relationship-dependent business model presents significant risk and margin limitations. Need to transition to system-dependent model to maximize margins and reduce reliance on key individuals. They hadn't fired me because I was failing. They'd fired me because I was succeeding, but in a way that didn't fit their spreadsheet-driven, impersonal vision of how a business should run. My success, built on relationships, was a significant risk to them. More disturbing, on a subsequent slide titled Phase 2 Talent Optimization, was a list of team reduction targets. Keith, my brilliant designer. Janice, my star account manager. 3 other dedicated members of my core team. all of them marked for termination once I was out of the picture and the initial client transition, however rocky, was deemed complete. They were systematically planning to dismantle everything I had built, piece by piece, person by person. Jennifer came into the office and read the presentation over my shoulder, her hand instinctively covering her mouth. "Clayton," she whispered, "they were planning to dismantle everything you built. Everything!" "And blame any fallout on me," I added, the chilling clarity of their strategy now fully apparent. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Brandon Kane. "Board meeting tomorrow. Need to discuss reconciliation ASAP. Please call. Urgent." I set the phone down, my gaze fixed on the printed presentation. The final slide showed their projected revenue after all these strategic changes, a projected 22% higher margin. It was a fantasy, built on the absurd assumption that all clients would meekly accept massive price hikes and a clear degradation of service and relationship management after seeing the people they trusted cast aside. It was a house of cards, and Kane was frantically trying to keep it from collapsing. I picked up my phone, but it wasn't Brandon Kane I called. I dialed Daniel Thompson at Apex Outfitters. "Daniel," I said, my voice firm, resolute. "I'm interested in your offer. Very interested. With one condition." "Name it," Daniel replied without hesitation. "I want to bring my core team with me. 5 people. The best of the best. They're the heart of what we do." There was a brief pause, not of hesitation, but perhaps of pleasant surprise. "Done," Daniel answered. "Consider it done. When can you all start?" "Give us 2 weeks," I said, "and I'll need official offer letters for all 6 of us, detailing the terms we discussed, by the end of today if possible." "You'll have them," Daniel promised. That evening, I called Keith, then Janice, then the other 3 members of my indispensable team. I explained everything, my termination, Kane's disastrous restructuring plan, their names on the cut list. I laid out the entire ugly truth. Then, I told them about Apex Outfitters, about Daniel Thompson's offer, about the chance to rebuild something together, somewhere they'd be valued. The response was immediate, unanimous. All 5 said yes, without a moment's hesitation. The loyalty, it turned out, ran both ways. That night, for the first time since the terse meeting with Brandon Kane, I slept soundly. The anxiety that had been a knot in my stomach had loosened, replaced by a sense of purpose and, dare I say, excitement. I didn't return Brandon Kane's frantic calls or his pleading emails. My focus was now on the future, on building something new with people I trusted. Instead of engaging with Northstar's desperation, I scheduled meetings with my top clients from my Northstar days, Sunbeam Financial, Vanguard Properties, and the others. Not to poach them, not yet. Legally, I had to be careful during the transition and my non-compete period, however flimsy Northstar's interpretation of it was. These were check-ins, meetings as a friend, someone who genuinely cared about their businesses. I met Diane from Sunbeam Financial for lunch near her office. Before we'd even looked at the menus, she leaned forward. "Clayton," she said, her expression serious, "we're not renewing with Northstar. That decision is final. The way they handled your departure, the lack of communication, it's completely unacceptable. The question for us now is, where do we go next?" "Diane," I began carefully, "you know I can't solicit your business right now. Legally and ethically, I need to be very careful during this period." She smiled, a knowing, almost mischievous glint in her eye. "I understand completely, Clayton. But hypothetically, purely hypothetically, if you were to land at a company that offered similar services, a company that valued relationships the way you do, we would be very, very interested in exploring how to follow you." By the end of that week, I'd had similar, carefully worded conversations with all 5 of my major former clients. The consistent theme was their frustration with Northstar's new direction and their loyalty to the service and partnership I had provided. None of them had received any meaningful calls or outreach from Brandon Kane or anyone else at Northstar attempting to genuinely salvage the relationships. It was clear Kane was scrambling, but not in a way that actually addressed client concerns. Meanwhile, as promised, Apex Outfitters sent formal, attractive offer letters to me and my team. One by one, Keith, Janice, and the others submitted their resignations at Northstar Apparel, sending ripples of shock and dismay through their soon-to-be former colleagues. The following Monday, Brandon Kane showed up at my house unannounced. I was in the garage, tinkering with my old Chevy, a project I'd neglected for years. He pulled his sleek Mercedes into my driveway, stepping out with an air of forced composure that didn't quite mask the anxiety clear on his face. "Clayton, we need to talk," he said, his voice strained. This has gone too far. The board is breathing down my neck. Key team members are resigning en masse. Clients are not just threatening to leave, they are leaving. "Sounds challenging," I replied, wiping grease from my hands with a rag, my voice calm. "Unfortunately, Brandon, I've already accepted a position elsewhere." His face flushed, a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You're joining a competitor. That violates your non-compete agreement." "Actually," I said, closing the hood of my Chevy with a satisfying clunk, "Apex Outfitters isn't on the restricted list in my contract. My lawyer, Paul Harrison, confirmed it yesterday." Kane's eyes widened slightly. "You're talking to lawyers now, Clayton? Be reasonable. Whatever Apex is offering, we'll beat it. We'll double it. Just name your price." I looked at him directly then, really looked at him. "It's not about the money, Brandon," I said quietly but firmly. "It never was." "Then what is it?" he almost shouted. "What do you want? Name it!" "I wanted respect, Brandon," I said, my voice steady. "Respect for 14 years of building something valuable. I wanted a conversation, not a 10-minute dismissal. I wanted my team protected, valued for their contributions, not targeted for elimination to pad some spreadsheet you barely understand." His expression changed, a flicker of realization, then panic, as he understood I knew about his Project Phoenix restructuring plan. That was just a draft," he stammered. "A scenario planning exercise, standard procedure." "Goodbye, Brandon," I said, and walked past him towards my house. "The board will fight this," he called after me, his voice cracking. "We'll sue you! We'll sue Apex! We'll sue everyone involved!" I turned back one last time, standing on my porch. "You can try, Brandon, but before you do, I suggest you ask yourself, and ask your board, what will ultimately cost your shareholders more? Letting me and my team walk away quietly to rebuild elsewhere, or a very public, very messy legal battle, explaining to the world why all your major clients and your top talent left simultaneously right after you took the helm?" He had no answer for that. A week later, I started at Apex Outfitters. My team joined me shortly after. 2 weeks after that, my largely irrelevant non-compete period with Northstar officially ended. Within a month, 4 of our 5 major clients from my Northstar days had signed new, lucrative contracts with Apex Outfitters, specifically requesting me and my team as their account managers. I never called anyone else at Northstar. I never spoke badly about the company in public. I didn't have to. The market and their own actions did the talking. 6 months after I joined Apex, I was in my new office, reviewing our quarterly numbers. Daniel Thompson, Apex's CEO, knocked on my open door. "You might want to see this, Clayton," he said, placing his tablet in front of me. It was a financial news article. The headline read, "Northstar Apparel CEO Brandon Kane steps down amid drastic financial shortfall and shareholder revolt." The article detailed how Northstar had missed its quarterly projections by a staggering 18%. The Eastern Division, my former territory, had seen nearly 40% of its business evaporate in under 6 months. The Kestrel Group Board had accepted Brandon Kane's resignation, effective immediately. I handed the tablet back to Daniel without comment. "You don't seem surprised," Daniel noted, a slight smile playing on his lips. Hard to build lasting relationships on spreadsheets, Daniel, I replied. That afternoon, I received a LinkedIn message from Thomas, Northstar's CFO. The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss recovery strategies. Your name came up. Would you consider having a conversation? I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on finalizing our quarterly presentation for Sunbeam Financial. Our team at Apex had delivered their new corporate uniforms 2 weeks early, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Diane had already introduced us to 2 other potential major clients within their network. The next day, Jerry Coleman called. "Thought you'd want to know," he said. "Kestrel Group is trying to sell off Northstar Apparel. What's left of it? The stock's down another 22% since Kane resigned. They're bleeding money." "Who's buying?" I asked. "That's the thing," Jerry chuckled. "No takers yet. Word on the street is they're desperately trying to reach out to you through back channels. The board thinks you're the only one who can stabilize the client relationships and salvage any value." I thanked Jerry for the information and went back to work, leading my team at Apex. Later that week, I took them all out for lunch to celebrate our first 2 quarters of consecutive significant growth. Keith showed us exciting sketches for a new sustainable product line. Janice shared glowing updates on client feedback and new referrals. We discussed Apex ambitious but achievable expansion plans. No one mentioned Northstar. That evening, I received a direct email from Eleanor Bishop, Northstar Apparel's board chair. "Clayton," it began, "the situation here has become untenable. We acknowledge that the previous leadership made a grave error in judgment regarding your departure and the subsequent restructuring. Would you consider returning to Northstar Apparel as CEO? We are prepared to offer complete autonomy, a significant equity stake, a board seat. Name your terms." I closed my laptop without replying immediately. The next morning, I called a meeting with my core team at Apex. "I've been approached about returning to Northstar as CEO," I said plainly, laying it all out for them. "I wanted you all to hear it from me first. I'm declining their offer." Keith nodded. Din, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Figured they'd try that eventually." Janice smiled too. "Too little, too late," she added. "Exactly," I said. "We're building something far better, something real, right here at Apex." That afternoon, I sent a brief, polite email to Eleanor Bishop. "I appreciate the offer, but I must respectfully decline. I'm fully committed to my current position and team at Apex Outfitters. I wish Northstar the best in its future endeavors." 3 days later, the news broke, sending ripples through the industry. Apex Outfitters had acquired Northstar Apparel's entire Eastern Division in a strategic asset purchase. Daniel Thompson, ever the shrewd negotiator, had managed the deal quietly, paying pennies on the dollar for what had once been Northstar's crown jewel. The Kestrel Group board, facing mounting losses and shareholder fury, had no choice. It was either sell to us or watch the entire division collapse into insolvency. I never had to strike back directly. The market, and the principles of good business, did it for me. 1 year to the day after my termination from Northstar, I drove past their former Eastern Division office building. The bold, new Apex Outfitters logo now hung proudly where the Northstar sign had once been. The building looked the same from the outside, but everything inside had changed. We'd managed to rehire some of the dedicated staff who'd been senselessly let go during Brandon Kane's brief, disastrous tenure. We'd recovered 3 more significant client relationships that had deteriorated after my departure. The division, now integrated into Apex, was already generating more revenue and higher profits than it ever had under Northstar's old or new management. I parked across the street and just watched for a few minutes as employees left for the day. Familiar faces from my old team now mixed with new Apex colleagues, all looking happy, engaged, purposeful. When I got home, Jennifer was in the kitchen, the aroma of my favorite meal filling the air. "I drove by the old office today," I told her. She studied my expression carefully. "Nostalgia or closure?" she asked. "Closure, I think," I replied with a smile. "Definitely closure. Did you know it's been exactly 1 year today?" She nodded, her eyes warm. I remembered. That's why I made your favorite tonight. Over dinner, Dylan called from Seattle, excited to share news about a major sustainable design project his architecture firm had just landed. How's the new job going, Dad? He asked. It's good, son, I replied, the words feeling more resonant than ever before. Building something that will last. The same words I'd used for 14 years at Northstar. But this time, I knew, with every fiber of my being, that it was true. Later that evening, I received a text from Jerry Coleman. Northstar's remaining divisions just got acquired by Gravora Group. Clean sweep. Nothing left of the original company. I set my phone down and walked out onto our deck. The spring air was warm, filled with the scent of blooming jasmine and the quiet hum of possibility. I thought about Brandon Kane for a moment, wondered briefly what he was doing now. I hoped he'd learned something valuable from the experience, though a part of me doubted it. I thought about all those years, all those late nights, missed family dinners, postponed vacations, all the sacrifices made building bridges for a company that, in the end, didn't value them or the people who built them. The sacrifices had been real, undeniably, but so were the relationships I'd forged. In the end, those relationships, built on trust and mutual respect, had followed me. Not because I'd asked them to, not because of any contractual obligation, but because we had built something authentic, something genuine together. No spreadsheet could ever capture that value. No short-sighted restructuring could ever erase it. The next morning, I arrived at Apex Outfitters early. I reviewed our latest quarterly projections. We were now trending 30% above our ambitious targets. I checked our client retention numbers. 97%, the highest in Apex's history. Daniel stopped by my office, leaning against the doorframe with a satisfied grin. Board approved your proposal this morning, he said. The employee ownership program starts next quarter. Keith and Janice will head up the implementation team. I nodded. They'll do it right. You know, Clayton, Daniel said, his expression thoughtful, when all this started, when we first brought you on board, I thought we were just getting a very talented executive and access to some lucrative client relationships. I didn't realize then that we were actually getting a completely different and much better way of doing business. Relationships over transactions, Daniel, I replied. Always. After he left, I opened my desk drawer and took out the old fishing trophy, the one the Vanguard Properties team had given me all those years ago. I placed it on my shelf, right next to new photos of my smiling, thriving team at Apex Outfitters. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need vindication. I just needed to build something that would last. And this time, I knew I had. Thank you so much for joining us on Clayton's journey today here on Life Stories 1. It's a powerful reminder that true value in business, and in life, often lies in the connections we build and the integrity we maintain. What did you think of Clayton's decisions? Let us know in the comments below. If you were inspired or moved by this story, please give this video a thumbs up, and most importantly, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on our next compelling life story. We appreciate your support more than words can say. Until next time, take care and keep building those meaningful connections.